Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Kishore Kishori, Jaya Kishore Kishori, Jaya Kishore Kishori, Jaya Kishore Kishori. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Kishore Kishore Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath, Shri Baladev, Shrimati Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai, Shri Gauranitai Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Hena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutane Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pastaja Deshatanine. Please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 7, The Killing of the Demon Trinavarta. We're going to cover 4 verses, beginning with text 22. And it looks like 22 is the verse that's written on the board, so we'll recite that one. Please repeat. Muhurtam abhavad goshtam. Muhurtam abhavad goshtam. Rajasa tamasavritam. Rajasa tamasavritam. Sutam yashodana pashyat. Sutam yashodana pashyat. Tasmin yastavati yataha. Tasmin yastavati yataha. Muhurtam abhavad goshtam. Rajasa tamasavritam. Sutam yashodana pashyat. Tasmin yastavati yataha. Please chant. Muhurtam abhavad goshtam. Rajasa tamasavritam. Sutam yashodana pashyat. Tasmin yastavati yataha. Muhurtam abhavad goshtam. Rajasa tamasavritam. Sutam yashodana pashyat. Tasmin yastavati yataha. Muhurtam abhavad goshtam. Rajasa tamasavritam. Sutam yashodana pashyat. Tasmin yastavati yataha. Muhurtam abhavad goshtam. Rajasa tamasavritam. Sutam yashodana pashyat. Tasmin yastavati yataha. Muhurtam abhavad goshtam. Rajasa tamasavritam. Sutam yashodana pashyat. Tasmin yastavati yataha. Anybody else? Word for word synonyms, please repeat. Muhurtam, for a moment. Abhavat, there was. Goshtam, throughout the whole pasturing ground. Rajasa, by big particles of dust. tamasa avritam, covered with darkness. Sutam, her son. Yashoda, Mother Yashoda. Naapashyat, could not find. Tasmin, in that very spot. Nyastavati, she had placed him. Yataha, where? Translation, we'll read the translation now for 4 texts, and then text 25 will have a purport. For a moment, the whole pasturing ground was overcast with dense darkness from the dust storm, and Mother Yashoda was unable to find her son where she had placed him. Because of the bits of sand thrown about by Trinavarta, people could not see themselves or anyone else, and thus they were illusioned and disturbed. Because of the dust storm, stirred up by the strong whirlwind, Mother Yashoda could find no trace of her son, nor could she understand why. Thus she fell down on the ground like a cow who has lost her calf, and began to lament very pitifully. When the force of the dust storm and the winds subsided, Yashoda's friends, the other gopis, approached Mother Yashoda, hearing her pitiful crying. Not seeing Krishna present, they too felt very much aggrieved, and joined Mother Yashoda in crying, their eyes full of tears. Srila Prabhupada's purport. This attachment of the gopis to Krishna is wonderful and transcendental. The center of all the activities of the gopis was Krishna. When Krishna was there, they were happy. And when Krishna was not there, they were unhappy. Thus, when Mother Yashoda was lamenting Krishna's absence, the other ladies also began to cry. End of Prabhupada's purport. We're seeing here a very beautiful picture of Vrindavan, a little insider's view. In his introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada writes that this Srimad Bhagavatam is now rendered into English in such a way that if one simply gives a careful reading to this Srimad Bhagavatam, one will know God perfectly well. So much so that one will be able to defend himself from the onslaught of atheists. And over and above this, the reader will be able to convert others to accepting God as a concrete principle. The whole Srimad Bhagavatam, then, is geared towards simply one objective, and that is to allow the reader to know God perfectly well. It's also Krishna's desire that we know him perfectly well, as he tells Arjuna at the beginning of the 7th chapter in Bhagavad Gita, that please hear how by practicing this bhakti yoga, you can know me in full, free from all doubts. So to understand Krishna in full, free from all doubts, to understand God perfectly well, means to go into the very depths of the intimate relations Krishna has with his topmost devotees. There's no question of understanding God if we don't have in the picture his devotees. So many people speak about God, this tradition, that tradition. Many people speak about God, but where do you find that description of the Supreme Lord, which ultimately centers on his very marvelous, almost shocking, beautifully orchestrated, intimate, loving relationships with his devotees? To understand God perfectly well means we have to understand what conquers God. Everybody talks about God as the Almighty, right? He who can't be conquered, Ajita. So Krishna himself, he actually wants to be conquered. But how is he conquered? How is a person put under control? So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear through the writing of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami that Krishna desired to come to earth. We recently observed Krishna Janmashtami. He actually desired to come to earth for a particular purpose. And there Krishnadas Kaviraj discloses Krishna's inner thoughts, wherein he says that love which is weakened by a sense of reverence, due to majesty, so that kind of love which is weakened by a sense of reverence, that does not actually attract me. It cannot melt my heart, therefore it can't conquer me. But that love which is free from all such reverence, that love in which Mother Yashoda treats me as her very dependent son, that type of love which causes my boyfriends, the Gopas, to say to me, "What kind of a big man do you think you are?" And they want to play with me and defeat me in arm wrestling and what have you. That kind of love which causes the gopis to think that I'm like their henpecked lover and they have me wrapped around their little finger. That kind of love totally conquers me. Therefore, I want to go to earth, and I'm going to bring my entourage with me, and we are going to put on a show. We are going to show the world this inconceivable level of love by which even I am conquered. So he came to actually showcase Vraja Bhakti. And in this way, he said, the world will learn the glories of the Vrajavasis, of Vraja Bhakti, and will become attracted. So here in this chapter, we're hearing about one of the many demons who are going to come to try to kill Krishna. Trinavarta, the whirlwind tornado demon. So everybody knows Krishna can't be killed. Yet Yoga Maya causes the Vrajavasis to think Krishna can be killed. Their love for Krishna is just on that same mood, if you will, of how a mother loves their child in this world, or a lover loves a lover, a friend loves a friend. They actually think, oh my goodness, Krishna's in danger. They're so much attached to Krishna, single-pointedly. We may have so many objects of our love. But the Vrajavasis have only one object of their love, and that is Krishna. So, I'm sure every single person in this room has experienced the death of a loved one, whether it's a family member or a really dear friend or a spouse or a child or a parent. We've all experienced the death of one. But our life goes on. Even if it's our most loved one, our life still goes on because we have so many other objects of love. But for the Vrajavasis, they only have one object of love, and that's Krishna. So if Krishna were to die, which he can't, but if he were to be killed by, say, Trinavarta, their lives would be finished. There would actually be no possibility for them to live if Krishna were to disappear, expire. In this way, the Vrajavasis' love for Krishna is actually more glorious than Krishna's love for them. How many objects of love does Krishna have? Countless. He's reciprocating love with all of his devotees. So he has countless objects of love. But he tells the gopis, right, later on in this 10th canto, he's going to tell them, I've been defeated. I've been defeated. We're supposed to be like in an exchange here. You love me, I love you, you love me, I love you, back and forth, we reciprocate. But you know what? I've been totally defeated because I can't reciprocate your love. Why can't I reciprocate your love? Because all you have is me as your object of love. So your love is very single-pointed, very chaste. But my love is splayed out over countless devotees. So it's not actually possible for me to reciprocate your quality of love. So the Vrajavasis' love is the love which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to distribute. Meaning, he came to distribute the opportunity for us to not only understand and appreciate the Vrajavasis' mood of love, but he came to distribute the opportunity for us to follow in their footsteps. For us to imbibe, to some degree, their level of love for Krishna, the purity of their love. We don't really know what love is here in the conditioned state. We might have some little tiny glimpse or understanding, but we don't actually know what real love is. So the path of Bhakti Yoga is simply to teach one thing, and that is how to actually love. There's so many schools out there. Where's the department or the school that's teaching us how to love? So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita again, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami glorifies the pinnacle of love in the personality of Radharani. And he's glorifying the love of the gopis and specifically pinpointing Radharani. But he explains there that Krishna is so taken back by their love. He can't even understand it. And there Krishna says, I experience so much happiness by tasting my love for Radha. I am the Vishaya, or the object of her love, and she is the Ashraya, or the abode of love. And when I love her, I experience so much happiness. And when I experience her loving me, I experience so much happiness. But Radharani, she experiences 10 million times more happiness by loving me than I can experience loving her or being the object of her love. What is it that the Ashraya is experiencing that I'm not experiencing? And for that reason, or at least that was one of his reasons, Krishna decided to play the role of Radharani, try to catch her mood. And that's why he appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna appearing in a form in which he took on the mood of Radharani. He wanted to experience what life is like to be the Ashraya instead of the Vishaya of that pure love. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami continues to glorify the quality of the love of the gopis and Radharani, and he explains that the love of the gopis, when we, read Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, we might tend to think, oh, they're just lusty girls, like we find in this material world. But Krishnadas Kaviraj says, no, don't think like that. In fact, that's why the Srimad Bhagavatam has 9 cantos of reading before you get to the 10th canto. And even when you get to the 10th canto, you have to read something like 20 chapters of Krishna killing the demons, etc., before you come to Krishna's Madhurya Leela. Bhagavatam is set up so that the reader becomes purified of all these anarthas that are in our heart, all these material conceptions that we have in our heart, the material vision that we have. It gradually elevates the reader to the point of purity, so that when they come to reading Krishna's Leela, there's no mundane, misconception about it. So Krishnadas Kaviraj says, no, don't even entertain that idea that the gopis are just lusty like we experience here in this material world. He says, no. The gopis' love for Krishna is like gold, and the so-called love that we experience in this world, which is actually lust, is like iron. They're very, very different substances, although a novice may mistake the two for one another. So he explains that real love is characterized by the fact that the happiness of the abode of love, or the happiness of the lover, is only in the happiness of the beloved, or the object of love. There's no tinge of desire for self-gratification. And then he illustrates with the gopis, and he says how the gopis, when Krishna sees them, because they're so beautiful and so cheerful and so sweet, that when Krishna sees the gopis or touches the gopis, he becomes happier. His happiness increases. His joyfulness increases. His beauty and his sweetness increases. So when the gopis see that Krishna's happiness and sweetness have increased, that causes them to become even more happy. They become so much more happy, and their sweetness increases due to that happiness, that now when Krishna again sees them, his happiness and sweetness increases to a further extent. And when they see that his happiness and sweetness have increased again, then their happiness and sweetness increases again. And in this way, there's an unending competition between Krishna and the gopis in which there is no defeat. No one claims, oh, I've been defeated. No one throws in the white flag and says, okay, I've been defeated, checkmate or something. It's an unending competition. So the gopis, it's explained, they decorate their bodies. They spent, in this material world, people spend a lot of time in front of the mirror, right? Putting on their makeup and doing their hair and putting on their clothes and their decorations and hanging their jewelry just right. Because, when I go out into public, I want people's eyes to turn and look at me and, oh, aren't I the object of everybody's vision? It gives me some gratification that people perceive me as beautiful or handsome or whatever. It's not like that, though, with the gopis. They only decorate their bodies, beautifying them, decorating them, only because they know it's going to give pleasure to Krishna, in hopes of giving Krishna more pleasure. So it's totally zero selfishness involved. So due to the Vrajabasis, whether they're in Madhurya Rasa, Vatsalya Rasa, Sakya Rasa, Dasya Rasa, all the residents of Vrindavan perform their service to Krishna, engage in their loving exchanges with Krishna solely and wholly for his pleasure, without a tinge of a desire for self-satisfaction. It's a very, very high level, which most of us are going to have a hard time comprehending. But at least theoretically we can try to comprehend. And most importantly, we should appreciate the level of love that the Vrajabasis have. Because what does Scripture tell us? What does Prabhupada tell us in Nectar of Devotion? That to perfect our devotional service, we cannot imitate the Vrajabasis, but we can follow in the footsteps of the Vrajabasis. That one should have a Vrajabasi that they're most attracted to and understand their mood of love for Krishna and try to become a servant of the servant of the servant. Therefore, right at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 2nd chapter, we have this verse by Sutta Goswami, Shushusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. By serving those devotees who have a higher level of love for Krishna than we do. By serving such devotees, then that mood becomes imbibed by us. Our hearts become cleansed, and we can actually attain ruchi, or firm attraction to Krishna. And that ruchi matures into firm attachment, and then emotional ecstasy, and then full-blown Krishna prema. Here in the material world, most people, or I should say too many people, probably most people, are not at all interested in going back to Godhead. They're not at all interested in developing love for God. Then we come to the section of people that, fortunately, do have an attraction to going back to Godhead. They do understand that the purpose of human life is to get out of this place and go to our eternal spiritual home where we belong. But 99.99% of such religious or spiritually inclined people are selfishly motivated. I want to get out of jail because I'm suffering. I want to become a spiritually inclined person because it's a happy thing to do. It makes me feel good. Or I know it's the right thing to do. They're very dutiful. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach a form of love of God that cannot be attained practically anywhere else in the world, in any tradition. Even in Vaishnavism, go to all the different sampradayas, many practitioners, perhaps most practitioners, still have a desire for self-gratification in their pursuits of even Vishnu bhakti. Therefore, we have the 4 types of liberation that Vaishnavas generally aspire for. We have Salokya Mukti, in which one desires to live on a planet with the Lord. I don't want to live here anymore. I want to go to where the Lord lives. I want to live on His planet. Then there's, thank you. Then there's Sarupya. I want to have a spiritual form like the Lord, because then we can, personally associate. I can't personally associate with the Lord with this biochemical form. Then we have Samipya, in which one has actual personal association with the Lord. And then there's Sharshti. One wants to have the opulences, share the same opulences that the Lord has. These 4 types of mukti are considered bona fide, legitimate forms of liberation that Vaishnavas can aspire for. They do not aspire for Sayujya, which is the impersonal liberation in which one merges into the Brahmajyoti or like that. These 4 types of liberation are the goal of Vaishnavas. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach that Gaudiya Vaishnavas don't even want these 4 types of liberation. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his Shikshashtakam prayers, Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Jamani Jamanishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir Hoitaki Tvayi. All I want, he prays, all I want is your causeless devotional service, life after life. He's not praying, please take me to Goloka or Vaikuntha. He's not praying for one of those 4 liberations. The Vrajavasis are on that level. Absolutely no desire for self-gratification or self-benefit. Again, it's a very high platform. Might seem unattainable. We can't imitate it, but what we can do is understand it and aspire for it and follow in the footsteps of one who has such high level of prema. So as sadhakas, we are trying to become purified so that we can become better suited for aspiring for Krishna prema. All of this can be attained simply through chanting Hare Krishna. We hear in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni speaking to Vyasadeva, and he has finished explaining to Vyasadeva about his past life as a child, his mother dying by being bit by a poisonous snake, his becoming purified by the mercy of the Bhakti Vedantas that he associated with. He took their instructions and followed them. At the end of his life, he met with death, and Prabhupada explains there that simultaneously he gave up his material body and acquired a spiritual body, the body of Narada Muni. Then Brahma's day came to an end, and Narada Muni was breathed into the body of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, as was all of the entities in the material universe. And then at the beginning of Brahma's next day, Narada Muni again manifested in his form as Narada Muni. Then he explains to Vyasadeva that now I travel freely. I can go to both material and spiritual realms. Krishna personally handed me this stringed instrument called a veena. I simply go around non-stop chanting the glories of the Lord with my veena. And he tells Vyasadeva that when I chant the glories of the Lord, immediately, as if called for, the Lord comes and sits on the lotus of my heart. Narada Muni attained such a perfected stage of chanting that his chanting of the glories of the Lord were identical to the Lord. Meaning he actually had full realization of the Lord by chanting his glories. We all have this psychology that we like to hear people glorify us. It makes us feel good to get some praise, some recognition, some acknowledgement. Why do we have that psychology? It's because it originates in Krishna, whom we are a little fractal example of, or part of. Because Krishna has that psychology. He actually enjoys hearing people recite his glories. So when Narada Muni was chanting the Lord's glories, he did so with absolutely no desire for his own benefit. He only did it for the satisfaction of Krishna, to increase the happiness of Krishna. And because it was such 100% pure, Krishna immediately, Prabhupada says, Krishna appeared in Narada's heart by reflecting himself on the mirror of Narada's heart. Cheto, Darpana, Marjanam. Our heart or consciousness is like a mirror. But because it's covered by dust and dirt and grime, it only reflects material things. But when that chitta is 100% clean, then that mirror can properly reflect Krishna's love. Therefore, it's called love of God. It's Krishna's love, which is reflected on the heart of the living entity in a reciprocal exchange with him. So we hear here in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavatam 10th canto, that the residents of Vrindavan, particularly the gopis are being highlighted here, but all the residents, they were on the verge of death when they saw that Krishna was nowhere to be found. Trinavarta's dust storm completely covered their vision of Krishna. Even for a moment, being without Krishna in their vision caused the Vrajavasis to feel like they were about to die. Is that selfishness? Oh, my object of love is not in front of me. Oh, now I'm miserable. Just like any other sense object, you know. My toys are not in front of me now, so I'm going to throw a temper tantrum. The object of my love is not in front of me, so now I'm upset. I'm lonely. I don't have anybody to love me. Why are the Vrajavasis disturbed whenever Krishna is out of their presence for a moment? It's not due to selfishness. It's due to the fact that they feel Krishna's happiness will not be increased if he and I are not, personally present with each other. As we explained about the gopis earlier. They are always trying to increase Krishna's happiness, and by doing so, they become more happy, and then by their becoming more happy, he becomes more happy. So like that, all the residents of Vrindavan, they understand, without my serving Krishna in whatever particular way I serve him, his happiness is not going to be increased. We want to go back to Godhead due to selfish desires. I want to go and play with Krishna's cows, and I want to play leapfrog with Krishna, or I want to go to the forest at night and dance with Krishna. Doesn't that sound a lot more attractive than like going to work and going to school and having exchanges with people here? Of course. So we have that desire. I want to go back to Goloka. I want to go to Goloka. Please accept me into your circle of friends. I'll be a dasa, 100 times removed, but somehow or other, let me be there so I can enjoy my relationship with Krishna. But a pure devotee, on this level of the Vrajavasis, they don't desire to be with Krishna so that they can enjoy. They desire to be with Krishna because their service to Krishna is so intimate and so pleasing to him that if I'm separated from Krishna, I cannot please Krishna in that way, and therefore he's going to be the one that is at a disadvantage, if you will. So when Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Parichanaya sadhunam vinashaya tadushvitam, he comes to deliver those devotees who can't live without him. And why can't they live without him? Because they're afraid he can't live without them. They're understanding my service to Krishna gives him so much pleasure, I cannot tolerate being separated from Krishna. So he comes to fulfill their desire to be present, to be the object of their love. So this is what we're going to be hearing chapter after chapter after chapter here in the 10th canto. The amazingly high level of love that the Vrajavasis have for Krishna. And it is so amazing that it looks exactly like human affairs. And therefore it's so easily misunderstood, even by great personalities like Brahma and Indra. Brahma saw Krishna and his friends having a picnic in the forest, and he could not 100% accept that that's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, having sweet exchanges in the forest. So he had to verify that this was actually the Supreme Person by kidnapping all the boys and calves, and we all know the story. Because he wanted Krishna to display his majesty, and Krishna indeed fulfilled that desire by showing Brahma that, look, I've expanded into all these calves and boys. I've expanded to be them, and he showed his Vishnu form in them, just to verify to Lord Brahma. So Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes are just so sweet that they're very misunderstood. So as we're reading the 10th canto, we should relish the human-like nature of Krishna's pastimes, but not misunderstand that the devotees in these pastimes are at all tinged with the, desire for self-satisfaction like we have. So maybe we'll stop there, see if there's any questions or comments. Subal Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dana Kheli Mataji, thank you so much. Question that came to mind is just you mentioned that Lord Chaitanya's, one of the motives of Lord Chaitanya was to come and give us the opportunity to enter into this Braj Prema, Krishna Prema Pradayate. So he comes to give that opportunity. It's there available. And it's quite amazing and inconceivable, because when you narrated also Narada Muni, and we know the level of devotion of Narada Muni as you described, but Narada Muni still is not in the same level of, or at least, it's so difficult to even explain the same, trying to level things, put it in, but that the inhabitants of Vrindavan are in this highest level, and even Lakshmi Devi cannot have to perform austerities even to try to enter into that association of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Narada Muni usually comes as an observant, but not necessarily as, in the same level of intimacy as the gopis and the gopas. So then there is us who have the opportunity to enter into those pastimes, in some level, not necessarily on the same intimate level, but in some level you be part of that pastime. That's the aspiration that we have as followers of Lord Chaitanya. So it's very difficult to understand when you put it in the perspective of there's all these great personalities, examples of, ultimate devotion, Prahlad Maharaj, Hanuman, Narada Muni, like that, and they don't necessarily have that same. Well, anyway, can you explain a little bit? It's difficult. It's a little difficult for me even to put it.
It becomes extremely overwhelming when we hear about the rare opportunity that we're being offered. It almost seems, perhaps it's like an exaggeration, maybe it's false advertising. We find it very difficult to understand that how could we, these little teeny tiny jivas from the Tatashta Shakti, have an opportunity to become a das anu das anu das anu das in the very center of Krishna's most intimate abode of Vraj. It may seem like, well, how could I possibly have an opportunity to be a part of that when residents of Vaikuntha have a different flavor of love? You know, it's more reverential, etc., etc. There's variety in the spiritual world, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did indeed come to give the highest, you know, Vraj Prema, but it's not true that every single person who comes in contact with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement is going to achieve that. One has to actually develop incredible lolyam or greed to have it. Just because somebody's on the corner distributing $100 bills for free, here you go, $100 bill, $100 bill, you know, unless you want it, you're not going to take it. So we see in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, for example, with Murari Gupta, he was a Ram Bhakta, a very pure Ram Bhakta. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in a kind of a teasing way, asked him to be a Krishna Bhakta, Murari Gupta was, okay, trying to be very submissive and, you know, yes, sir, I'll be a Krishna Bhakta. But after some time, he had to come back and admit to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that, you know what? I've been trying really hard to displace Ram from my heart and replace him with Krishna, but it doesn't work. It appears that Sita Ram are in my heart for good. I cannot put Krishna in his place. And he felt a little bit like, oh, I was a failure. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu glorified Murari Gupta. Just see the purity of his love. He's so attached to his Ishtadev. This is his constitutional position, to be a Ram Bhakta. And Murari Gupta is one of the, you know, great associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So unless we actually desire, we have to desire to have the desire to have the desire, to have lolyam or greed for pure Vraja Bhakti. Because if we don't really want it, we're not going to get it. And we may end up, according to the bhakti that we develop, we may end up in Vaikuntha or Ayodhya or Dwarkadam. Not that that's bad. Don't take me wrong. Not at all. What I'm saying is, even in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement in this world, the highest dispensation possible, it doesn't mean everyone's going to take it. So our acharyas, the Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas, are showing how to develop that lolyam. And without that lolyam for that specific goal, and therefore we're supposed to follow in the footsteps of a Vrajabasi, that means we have to hear about them. I can't follow in the footsteps of somebody that I've not gotten to know. So Prabhupada begins his introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam. I think it's actually in his preface, excuse me, that by studying this Srimad Bhagavatam, one will know God perfectly well. Knowing God perfectly well means that we must know his intimate entourage and associates very well, and becoming very well acquainted with his Leela and his associates, then we'll develop some attraction. We should start to see where I'm attracted. Am I attracted more to, you know, Dwarkadish Krishna, Vasudev Krishna, or Vraja Krishna, or maybe Ram, or maybe Narayan, you know, and then when we come to Goloka, which area? Okay, I've centered it down to Vraj. Okay, is it like Madhurya rasa, Sakya rasa, Vatsalya. Gradually, we have to develop lolium that becomes more narrow, more pinpointed, more direct, specific. So yeah, it's an incredible, extremely rare, unheard of opportunity. Yet we have it, the opportunity. So we have to hear about how rare it is, not just take it for granted. That's why we have to be very careful when we go out and meet the public. And people are like, oh, well, I follow this tradition and I follow that tradition. So are we worshiping the same God? You know, my religion also teaches we should love God. My religion also teaches this is not our real home. We should go to heaven, or, you know. It might be politically correct to like tell people, oh, yes, we're all worshiping the same God. Oh, yes, we all teach love of God. But really, to be quite honest, no, we're not. No, we're not. We're not even talking about the same thing you're talking about. We're talking about something in a totally different ballpark. You know? So we ourselves have to make sure we're not bringing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's gift down to some ordinary religious spiritual level. We're talking about something that is totally unheard of, totally unfathomed in any tradition. Even other Vaishnava traditions have no concept of what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give of Vraja Bhakti. No concept at all. So, Patita Pavana, those of us who are on the lowest level, can get the gift of the highest prema simply by wanting it, simply by accepting it. Anything else? Okay, anybody else? Otherwise, we'll stop there. And tomorrow, we'll do text number 26. Okay, thank you very much. Garantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.